Disney vs. DreamWorks, Pokemon vs. Digimon, Marvel vs. DC, Steven Universe vs. Adventure Time, and of course, the big one, The Simpsons vs. Family Guy. These are some pretty big media rivalries. But what if I told you that a new challenger has entered the arena? One so successful with younger audiences that The Simpsons themselves had no choice but to acknowledge it. And in classic new Simpsons fashion, they did it with a wink, a nudge, and a joke so pointedly stupid it accidentally poked an entire fanbase. A single gag that sparked an online firestorm, with keyboard warriors swarming the internet to declare that The Simpsons days are absolutely numbered. Seriously, when people are concerned about their fears of Smiling Friends becoming the next Rick and Morty, I think these kinds of people with knee-jerk defensive reactions are the people we should be concerned about the most in the fanbase. But all that said, internet culture loves a good feud. Give people two shows, especially two animated shows with passionate online fanbases, and suddenly you've got timelines full of beef. And lately, one of the funniest fake rivalries on the internet is the supposed clash between Smiling Friends and The Simpsons. According to Twitter, Reddit, and even the legendary autistic gamer, who famously threw his metaphorical hat into the debate, these two shows apparently hate each other. The same kind of hate that people misconstrue my love versus hated videos for. Some kind of animation console war, essentially. If you were to look at comments online, it's been framed like a generational war. The scrappy, unhinged, new age Adult Swim darling versus the ancient, yellow-skinned juggernaut that defined American animation in the past. Except none of that is real. Like, at all. What's actually happening is one of the funniest cases of the internet taking a light joke, mostly harmless, barely even a jab if we're being honest, and turning it into a narrative. Well, I definitely fall on a side that thinks that the parody wasn't all that funny, mostly because it leans into the same new Simpsons humor and joke writing, desperately trying to prove the show is still relevant to anyone other than boomers who fell asleep with Fox on. I still see it as a pretty harmless parody, and as most people know, parody is basically the highest form of flattery. Ever since Mad Magazine, Weird Al, and National Lampoons, parody has been a way for established giants to nod at rising talent. Think of it as brand synergy, essentially. The legacy show gets a bump in attention from younger audiences, and the newer property gets free publicity just for being acknowledged. But because The Simpsons is widely seen as an insanely played out show, a show that once tore into companies like Disney and even its own Fox overlords, now functioning as a massive Disney-owned brand kept alive through crossovers and Fortnite skins, it's not hard to understand why some viewers see the parody as tasteless. To them, it feels like a bloated corporate titan punching down at a smaller, creatively fresher show that many argue is outdoing The Simpsons at its own game.
Just a quick reminder that a like and a comment helps my videos tremendously in getting seen by the algorithm, so be sure to let me know below what you think.
That's why people online spun this into "the writers hate Zach and Michael." They interpreted the parody as condescension, sparking the narrative that Zach and Michael fired back out of contempt for the Simpsons-style writing with their own parody. If anything, Zach Hadel and Michael Cusack have shown nothing but respect for The Simpsons and their showrunners. And the receipts for this go beyond just interviews. Let's start with the quote that kicked this all off. An interviewer asked how Zach and Michael felt about The Simpsons parody of Smiling Friends. Zach, obviously playing it up, joked, "We're furious. We're making phone calls throwing stuff," which is just pure Zach humor. Immediately after, they even clarify how surreal and genuinely cool the moment was. Michael describes that was the most surreal moments of his entire life. Zach remembers seeing clips literally 1 minute after the episode aired, thinking it was AI because it felt too bizarre to be real. Because surprise, surprise, to be parodied by The Simpsons essentially means you've become too big for their writers to ignore. That's no small feat in animation, even if New Simpsons is a shadow of what it once was. The two are far from angry. They're genuinely honored. They grew up on the show. As Zach put it, the fact that Bart Simpson, even if just in parody form, knows they exist is something they're still wrapping their heads around. And here's where it gets even more funny if you've done your research. This isn't even the only time Zach has crossed paths with The Simpsons royalty. At the Annecy Film Festival for Animation, when Zach and Oni were attending the festival to show off Smiling Friends, Zach actually got invited to a party hosted by Matt Groening. And, adorably, Zach invited Oni as his +1, who went on to be gifted a Bart drawing by Matt Groening, so he could cut in front of him to get ice cream at the party.
Went with Zach to France. He was showing off Smiling Friends stuff at Annecy. There was a point where Zach gets a message from his like people, and they're like, "Zach, Matt Groening wants to meet you," and he's like, "Okay." Matt Groening walks out, and he's like being nice to Zach and Michael, and they take a picture together and they talk. They just had like an ice cream truck parked inside, like giving out free ice creams, and nobody was at it. And I was like, I want a fucking ice cream. He just like walks over and totally cuts me, and he just like steps in front of me with his back to me, and I was like, you fucking piece of shit. I was like really angry. Wait, and then he just like turns around and he, like no joke, he's like, "What? Come on, man. I made The Simpsons. That counts for something, right?" And I was just like, yeah. And I was still angry, and then he went, "Ugh, okay." And then he took out his wallet, and he just like took out a little like pre-signed Bart Simpson, and he gave it to me. He's like, "That makes it better, right?" And I'm like, yeah, it does.
Genuinely fucking blessed. You don't get invited to Matt Groening's party if he hates your show, or if any of the writers of The Simpsons genuinely hated you, or thought your show was bad. It's pretty much the exact opposite of any beef. That's the animation equivalent of getting knighted. And artistically, Zach's entire comedic upbringing is drenched in The Simpsons' influence. He's talked for years about how the show shaped his sense of timing and absurdity. He's even slipped Simpsons references into Smiling Friends, a character blatantly named Marge Simpson, the infamous green Homer who eats shrimp. These are never attacks on The Simpsons. They're simply tributes filtered through Zach's style, dark, surreal, and self-aware enough to tease the things he loves and once loved. Just like how no matter how unhinged he is while talking about the nostalgia critic with Oni, he still adores them and sees them as a part of his upbringing online.
I really don't even hate Nostalgia Critic. I really don't hate Doug Walker as a man or as an entertainer. I think I like him. It's like I feel the same way about him that I feel about I watch Nostalgia Critic sometimes. It's great background noise. But
though when Zach and Michael poke fun at The Simpsons, it's almost always affectionate commentary. Yes, they've joked about how long the show has been running. Yes, they've made fun of the zombified late-era character writing. The parody of Smiling Friends clearly points out their annoyances with the new writing style, portraying Homer as the soulless idiot, Marge a hyper-nag, Bart the try-hard cool youth that always has to say something stupid relating to pop culture.
Talk to it, man!
As The Simpsons' way of trying to stay relevant, and having Lisa, a character that was once the earnestly written voice of reason, now the show's sloppy virtue signal. Even though, I'll admit, during these times we currently live in, I'm hoping to God people don't misinterpret this as pro-fascism. Good lord. But I digress. You can tell this is essentially Smiling Friends ribbing The Simpsons writers, but not with any level of malicious intent. They're just clearly a bit tired of where The Simpsons has ended up in pop culture. Somewhere they have often even mentioned they don't want to find themselves either. As during a live drawing stream with Michael and Zach, they joked about The Simpsons movie being overly sentimental.
we should just plagiarize what Marge says in the Simpsons movie.
If you ever trusted me and loved me, you'll take my... There's a point in everyone's marriage.
This is the only time ever where the camera slowly zooms in on his face.
Yeah. He says there's a point in every friendship where you say, take my hand, and you don't question it.
Wait, is this like the first 5 seconds of the first episode?
Yeah.
Something they often said Smiling Friends wanted to avoid altogether, even though their goals for Smiling Friends almost are the same as The Simpsons, hoping to conclude the show with a film like The Simpsons had intentionally meant to do. But instead of like The Simpsons, they want to actually end it. But every major artist basically pokes fun at their inspirations. You can tell they still respect the show, even if they make fun of it every now and then. But of course, as always, the internet does not do nuance. The moment The Simpsons parody aired, some fans lost their minds. The mostly harmless joke, basically pointing out that Smiling Friends is chaotic, loud, and entirely built around its wacky internet influence atmosphere, was treated like a personal attack on the fans. People claimed The Simpsons writers were boomers trying to undermine a new classic, the same way Family Guy once mocked BoJack Horseman by describing it as
normal words.
But here's the twist again. Zach and Michael would probably agree with this joke. Smiling Friends isn't a story-driven epic. not a genre satire. They don't even claim it to be anything smarter than most people trying to claim it is. It's a chaos-powered character blender fueled by pure comedic instinct, something they unironically first wrote together high in an apartment, just trying to make each other laugh.
We get into a weird mindset when we make Smiling Friends, especially the pilot. We just went to our agent's apartment and got, it sounds so lame, but we did get like super high when we wrote. We don't usually. We're very sober and professional, but for that we got pretty high and wrote the script, and it's whatever, we just try to make each other laugh.
That's what makes it great. It's purposely fucking stupid. To outsiders that aren't well versed in stupid online internet humor, which I'll admit I absolutely adore, it probably does look like hyperactive nonsense populated by weird gremlins and sentient shrimp men. So basically, imagine showing your grandmother a shitpost from 2015. Yeah, but it's not gonna go well, even if you try to explain why it's so funny to most of the internet. All things considered, the Simpsons parody wasn't even all that unfair with how they portrayed Smiling Friends. It was pretty accurate, even if a little low effort. But even Smiling Friends' parody of The Simpsons was pretty low effort. Although, of course, it hit the marks better because they know how to make goofy humor and parodies much sharper. The real irony is that the Smiling Friends vs. Simpsons beef only exists because fans manufactured it. Fans with a lack of self-awareness to get that this is basically a promotional handshake. Smiling Friends fans, if we hope not to become like the next Rick and Morty, we need to tone down this out-of-touch behavior. While not all of the fandom behaves this way, a loud chunk of it act as though Smiling Friends, yes, the same show that made the nostalgic critics say this.
How hypocritical would it be if I'm like, look at this person who doesn't appreciate my art, when I literally make a living mocking people's art? Like, how hypocritical would that be? But on top of that, it's just funny.
Is somehow above parody or criticism, even if incredibly stupid. Those people seriously need to relax. And honestly, we also need to stop gatekeeping people from just enjoying the show openly, especially at an event that was specifically made for said show. But that's a whole separate can of worms I'll be digging into next week. Until then, take it easy, guys.